I think that Zelensky is about to make a move for Crimea or Donbass in the next 2 days. It's going to be big news coming soon. Kerch Bridge, I think, is going to go. And the reason I think that is that, just strategically, if you look at the map where they've been attacking, obviously they're about to do something. But because Putin is not well enough informed about that, he doesn't realize that's what's about to happen. And that's why Zelensky sent the letter yesterday, I think, to Putin, is because he's going to allow him to decline to want a peace deal. And then when they strike something like the Kerch Bridge, then it makes Putin look really bad because he just had an offer to him. He just was given this, olive branch, and Putin declining that would mean that it's all on Putin's shoulders that things go south. So today it seems as realistic that for Vladimir Putin, Crimea is no longer the great victory. It's in fact the bear trap. This could be very much so what catches him and ends his regime. Because if he cannot maintain that, if he loses Crimea, something that he has bragged about for so long, his population's proud of, it would show his total impotence and the fact that today he's not able to defend the empire. And that could very well trigger the downfall of Vladimir Putin. I think the most likely way that this war will end, and what I've projected since 2022, was there'll be a destabilizing event. Most likely it'll be economic in nature within Russia, or it could be a military where Ukraine has a major breakthrough the lines into Donbass or into Crimea. And at that point, it would be so destabilizing for the Putin regime that it could lead to their own collapse. And at that point, when we start to see the Russian lines break, once again for economic reasons or due to the fact that simply they're militarily overtaken at some point and the rest flee, then at that point, I think that Vladimir Putin will not be able to maintain power. And I think that we'll see his demise before we see an end to the war. The lack of fuel across Russia is pretty significant. We saw that more than 25% of all of the refining was taken offline in the month of May. And at this point, in some places like Crimea, they just have signs everywhere that say there's no diesel, there's no gasoline. And in a lot of parts of the country now, they have moved over to a system where you have to have coupons that are redeemed to get fuel. Now, as it spreads, it has a couple of different secondary effects. We know that the soldiers, for instance, in Crimea, as well as in occupied territories, are lacking basic supplies, including food, because they simply cannot get them from the mainland of Russia. Now, that's sort of interesting because that then opens up a very important opportunity for the Ukrainians to take advantage of it, to perhaps make a move for some of the occupied territories. Ukraine carried out a series of attacks in St. Petersburg, right as Vladimir Putin was doing his showcase event, trying to show that Russia's got a strong national economy and that it's growing. It's called the St. Petersburg Economic Forum. But carrying out this attack right now showed the entire delegation, all the people there, that in fact Russia today is in a very weakened state. The Ukrainian drones were able to get through to penetrate the airspace and to attack not only an oil refinery, but also to go after a naval base there, the Kronstadt base, and attack a dry dock ship. Ukraine is routinely carrying out these attacks, and again, it is a black eye for Vladimir Putin and his ability to project strength, not only domestically, but because of this event, internationally as well. Well, it's of course very embarrassing for the Kremlin to see this. And when you look at the videos of the attack itself, it's even more embarrassing. The National Guard members who were there to protect the area did a very lackluster job of trying to shoot down the incoming drones. They very clearly didn't have any sort of preparation for this. And so the drones got right through. But it shows that within Russia, it's a far weaker situation than what many people anticipate. In fact, the situation today is getting pretty bad because Ukraine is carrying out so many strikes so routinely. And now the entire population of Russia is starting to wonder, well, what's Putin there for if he can't protect us? Today, Russia's economy is in a very bad situation. We see that it's getting to a point where their deficit is growing so fast and they have no means of being able to catch up with it, within a few months, if they don't find a solution, they're going to have really a fork in the road. Either they'll have to default on the amount of money they owe, or they'll have to start printing money, in which case they'll have hyperinflation. But in either case will this work out well to have a normalized economy within Russia. Right now, the Putin regime is getting ever closer to its end. I think the strongest evidence for that, though, is what we see internally going on within the oligarchy. Vladimir Putin was always able to maintain power because he had this deal, a social contract with the elites, that he allowed them to do whatever they wanted, but in exchange, he could be the dictator. But today, he's seizing their assets. He's allowing the FSB and other intelligence agencies to also seize their assets. And that includes oligarchs who had historically been relatively close to the Kremlin. So what's behind that? Well, today there's less money to steal. So where are they going to get money to pay off this huge, gigantic security infrastructure that he has? Well, they have to get it from somewhere. And today, he's allowing them to go and to rob the elites. But by doing that, he's taken away their loyalty. And by losing their loyalty, that opens them up to become free agents as to how they then will approach the Kremlin. Vladimir Putin today is in a situation that a normal leader would look at the realities, talk to his leadership, and try to find a way to the fact that Ukraine is attacking across his country and making logistics impossible, making the day-to-day economy impossible to operate. But he doesn't do that. It's due to his own hubris, his own arrogance, that he chooses to surround himself with yes men who only tell him that things are going well. He doesn't seem to truly appreciate how bad the situation has become. As a result of that, he's now put himself into a situation where he's only being funneled good news, and he's not going to react in time to the quickly mounting bad news that could very well destabilize his government. No matter how we count it, Vladimir Putin today has already lost this war, and there's several different ways we could consider that. On one side, it's over 1,350,000 Russian soldiers killed or injured. And what has he gained for that? He's gained so incredible little. It's, in fact, his army is moving slower than Napoleon's military did when it tried to march on Moscow. So when you consider how slow that really is, it's also embarrassed Russia on the global stage. How can Russia today try to project strength to other countries like China when it's been shown to be taking a severe beating in places like Donbass? Russia today has been shown to be a third-rate country, militarily, economically, and politically. It's even lower than that. Today it doesn't have the ability to even maintain the lines in Donbass, and it's being pushed backwards. The end for the Putin regime is getting ever closer. But for Russia, this is going to be decades into the future, if not centuries, that's remembered not as a global power, but as a global loser. And that's thanks to Vladimir Putin. And this could be easily said to be a loss, not just in this war, but for his eternal memory.
Только Господь знает, хватит нам здоровья и мне, и вам, и всем здесь собравшимся, для того, чтобы дожить до завтра, до послезавтра, и тем более решать какие-то стоящие перед нами задачи, добиваться целей, которые...
Vladimir Putin's regime is most likely to end through some sort of non-democratic change. I don't think it's going to be through the elections because they don't really have them in Russia, but much more likely is that those around him will realize that he is more of a liability than an asset. He doesn't actually provide security for the elites, but he is somebody who jeopardizes their security or jeopardizes their wealth or their ability to maintain their wealth. And in which case, it becomes much more practical, much more of a logical move to get rid of him than to allow him to stay in place and to continue down this path that's leading Russia to total destruction. We already know there's a lot of attention with the elites in Russia. We see them withdrawing capital from the country. We see them physically leaving the country. And we see that the parliament now, the Duma, is trying to crack down on that by trying to seize more of their assets. But all in all, today the situation for the elites in Russia is pretty tense. And that's why it becomes ever more likely that somebody will decide that it's better to have a very terminal end to the Putin regime. I don't anticipate Vladimir Putin saying much more than what he's already historically said. The fact is Vladimir Putin maintains very maximalist demands from Ukraine, and he doesn't treat Ukraine as an equal partner because in his eyes, it's really not. And so going ahead, I think it's unlikely that Vladimir Putin is going to have any sort of change of position. And we see that the letter that President Zelensky sent just yesterday offering to start peace talks was treated like a joke by the Kremlin. So far, they've not expressed any interest in that and, in fact, have sort of mocked Zelensky's efforts.